The rain had stopped only 20 minutes earlier, leaving the streets slick and reflective, like the city had been wiped clean but not forgiven. Toledo at 11:07 p.m. was a strange kind of quiet, gas stations humming under fluorescent lights, convenience stores glowing like lonely beacons, and the distant pulse of highway traffic whispering against the dark. Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Wallace drove through it with the collected stillness of someone who'd spent half her life navigating places far more dangerous. The government-issued SUV hummed beneath her, steady and obedient, a reassuring contrast to the chaos she had once commanded overseas. She wore civilian clothes tonight, simple black slacks, a soft gray sweater, but even out of uniform, her posture carried the memory of discipline, straight spine, measured breath, eyes always aware. She wasn't thinking about military briefings or convoy routes. She was thinking about her quiet apartment, the leftovers waiting in the fridge, and maybe, if she wasn't too tired, playing one voicemail from her sister she'd been putting off all week. She signaled, turned, followed the speed limit. No rush, no reason to be on alert. Until the night shifted. A sudden flash of blue and red cut across the rearview mirror, turning the interior of her SUV into a strobing, fractured world. Adrienne's hands tightened on the wheel. She inhaled once, exhaled once, the way she'd done before stepping out of helicopters into hot zones. Not tonight, she murmured. Still, she slowed, signaled, and pulled to the shoulder with practiced calm. Her pulse remained steady. She had done nothing wrong. Behind her, a patrol car door crashed open. A man stepped out broad-shouldered, rigid, walking like the world owed him space. Sergeant Daniel Mercer approached not from the passenger side like protocol demanded, but directly toward her window, as if proximity alone could control the situation. Adrienne lowered the glass halfway. Evening, officer. May I ask what license? Registration. No greeting. No explanation. His flashlight hit her eyes like an accusation. Adrienne kept her hands visible. Of course. But if you can tell me why you drifted. Didn't signal. Looked impaired. I wasn't impaired. Mercer leaned closer, the light narrowing. License. And registration. A familiar calculation clicked into place in Adrienne's mind. This wasn't about traffic. This was about ego. About someone looking for friction and believing they'd found an easy target. She handed over the documents. This is a federal vehicle. I'm a government, doesn't matter, he snapped. The cold lifted off the pavement, creeping under her shoes. The road was empty. His tone sharpened. His hand slid a little too close to his holster. Step out of the car. Adrienne held his gaze. Calm. Controlled. Unshaken. On what grounds? She asked. Mercer didn't answer. He opened her door himself. And somewhere deep in her chest, a fire she hadn't felt in years whispered, not today. Not again. She reached for her phone, pressed record, and stepped out into the streetlight's cold glow. New tension, deepened characters, cinematic escalation. The night air bit at her skin as she stood beside the SUV, its metal still warm from the engine. Mercer circled her like a wolf scanning for weakness. His boots splashed through shallow puddles, leaving dark trails that stretched across the asphalt like claw marks. Arms at your sides, he ordered. Adrienne complied, silent but unbowed. Cars passed occasionally, one, then another, drivers glancing curiously but not stopping. People rarely intervened once they saw a badge. They assumed the uniform meant order, rightness, safety. Adrienne knew better. She had commanded soldiers younger than Mercer who'd carried more integrity in a single salute than he seemed to hold in his entire spine. Mercer began the sobriety test with relish. Walk the line. Heel to toe. The yellow road paint glistened faintly under the streetlights. Adrienne stepped carefully, precisely, her balance steady. She'd walked through monsoon mud, desert dunes, and earthquake rubble. A painted line on a clean road didn't intimidate her. But she felt Mercer's eyes like weights on her back, judging, doubting, waiting for a slip that wasn't coming. She finished the line, turned, and faced him. Anything else, Sergeant? His jaw worked. Irritation simmered beneath his skin, crawling up his neck. You think you're cute, don't you? He muttered. I think I'm cooperating. Mercer took a step closer, invading her space. People get real brave with cameras. Adrian didn't back away. Cameras keep the truth straight. His nostrils flared, an animal bracing for dominance. Then, without acknowledging a single thing she'd done correctly, he started writing a citation. Adrian stood still, the damp breeze brushing her hair forward, the headlights behind Mercer forming a halo of harsh, artificial light. She didn't rush him, didn't interrupt. She simply watched. Mercer tore the ticket from his pad and thrust it toward her. Failure to maintain lane. She took it slowly, her fingers grazing his for a fraction of a second, long enough for him to feel the steadiness in her touch, the absence of fear. Drive safe, he said with smug finality. Adrian folded the paper, tucked it in her pocket, and stepped back into her SUV. She didn't slam the door. She didn't peel off in anger. She simply drove away, letting the darkness swallow her taillights. But Mercer wasn't done thinking about her. He returned to his cruiser, adrenaline humming through him like electric current. Someone had challenged his authority. Someone had made him feel small. And he didn't forget faces that did that. When he got back to the station, he tossed the ticket in the log bin with careless confidence. A harmless citation, he thought. Nothing more. But 2 floors above him, in her office surrounded by military files, commendations, and framed maps of deployments, Adrian Wallace watched the stop again on her phone. Each second sharpened her resolve. This wasn't about pride. It was about a pattern. A culture. A silence she'd allowed too many times. And by morning, the first complaint had already been filed. Emotional shift, rising stakes, unexpected turns. The investigation moved faster than Mercer expected. Faster than he was prepared for. 3 days after the stop, he walked into the station like it was any other shift, same stale coffee smell, same chatter in the hallway. But the moment he entered, the whispering halted. Heads turned. Rookies straightened awkwardly. Even veterans avoided eye contact. He frowned. What? Officer Diaz stepped from behind his desk, face unusually serious. Mercer. Chief wants to see you. Mercer snorted. What, did somebody finally complain about my parking? But Diaz didn't smile. Inside the chief's office, blinds pulled tight, a manila envelope waited on the desk like a quiet bomb. Sit, Chief Reading said. Mercer did, irritation bubbling. Can we skip the suspense? Reading slid the envelope toward him. This is a civil rights complaint, filed against you. Mercer ripped it open with a laugh until the name stared back at him in bold letters. Plaintiff, Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Wallace. The room shrank around him. She's military? He scoffed. Not just military, Reading said. She's one of the highest-ranking officers in the region. Bronze Star. Multiple deployments. You stopped a senior officer. Mercer's pulse stumbled. She didn't say she was, she did. Reading cut in. It's on the video. Mercer swallowed. Hard. And there's her recording, Reading continued. Crystal clear. Shows you escalating without cause. Mercer opened his mouth, but no defense came, not a real one. You're going to court, Reading said. And it's going public. That night, as Mercer sat in his patrol car, staring at the rain streaking down the windshield, the first crack formed in the armor he'd worn for 15 years. He'd faced knives, guns, chases, but paperwork and politics? Cameras? A lieutenant colonel with medals and an unshakable presence? That he wasn't built for. Meanwhile, miles away, Adrian sat before her lawyers, watching the footage again. She wasn't angry anymore. She was focused. This isn't just about him, her attorney, Delaney Price, said. This could force policy reforms. Adrian nodded. She thought of recruits who admired her, young soldiers who looked to her for guidance. This is about all the people who don't have a uniform, she said softly. All the people who wouldn't be believed. When the court summons reached Mercer, his grip tightened until the paper crinkled. And somewhere deep inside, where pride used to be, something unfamiliar stirred. Fear. Not of jail. Not of losing a case. But of exposure, of the world seeing what he really was when the badge wasn't there to shield him. The turning point wasn't the lawsuit. It was the realization dawning on both of them. This wasn't a traffic stop anymore. It was a reckoning. Rising stakes, emotional depth, confrontation approaching. The courthouse steps gleamed under the morning sun, polished by decades of feet climbing toward truth or consequences. Today, they held a quiet tension, an unspoken electricity that threaded through the air as cars rolled up and people gathered in small clusters. Adrienne arrived with deliberate calm. She wore her full military dress uniform, not as intimidation, not as theater, but as identity. The medals pinned to her chest told a story Mercer had never cared to hear. The crisp lines of her jacket represented years of sacrifice that no traffic stop could diminish. When she stepped through the courthouse doors, conversations paused. Soldiers from Fort Wayne sat scattered among civilians, their presence silent but powerful. In the hallway, Mercer stood with his lawyer. For the first time in years, his uniform felt too heavy, his throat too tight, his confidence too thin. He turned and froze when he saw her. Adrienne's uniform caught the light. Her posture stood unyielding. Her expression carried no gloating, no triumph, only certainty. His lawyer nudged him. "Don't react." But he already had. Inside the courtroom, sunlight filtered through dusty blinds, casting stripes across the wooden benches and polished floor. The bailiff called for order. The judge entered. The murmurs faded. "Colonel Wallace," the judge said with respectful acknowledgement. "Thank you for your service." Mercer stiffened. Delaney Price stood tall beside Adrienne. "Your Honor, we present Exhibit A, the plaintiff's personal recording." The video began. Adrienne's voice. Mercer's tone. The harsh commands. The unnecessary aggression. The silence in the courtroom grew heavier with each second. Mercer watched his own face on the screen, cold, dismissive, superior, and didn't recognize himself. Or maybe he did, and that was the problem. Then the body cam footage played. His stance. His hand hovering near the gun. The absence of cause. Gasps whispered through the benches. Delaney approached Adrienne. "Lieutenant Colonel, did you resist at any point?" "No." "Did you comply with all instructions?" "Yes." "Did you threaten him in any way?" No. Her answers were clean, controlled, but not robotic. They carried the weight of lived truth. Then came the defense's turn. Breener approached with measured politeness. "Colonel Wallace, could it be that the officer simply misread the situation?" Adrienne lifted her chin. "Misreading is human. Escalation is a choice. And you recorded because silence has never protected people who look like me." A ripple of emotion flickered across the room. Mercer's turn came last. He didn't testify. His lawyer didn't trust him to. But the prosecutor asked one final question while the video paused on his face. "Sergeant Mercer, had you known her rank that night, would you have behaved differently?" Mercer hesitated. And his silence answered for him. The courtroom breathed in together, knowing the climax was coming. Emotional peak, decisive moment, raw honesty. 3 days of testimony, rewatches, objections, and legal sparring passed like a slow-moving storm, gathering pressure with every hour. By the final afternoon, the entire courtroom felt swollen with anticipation, ready to break open. The jury filed in. The judge observed them with a quiet, practiced understanding. The room held its breath. "In the matter of Wallace versus Mercer," the foreperson said, voice steady but weighted, "we find in favor of the plaintiff." A beat of silence. Then the words hit the room with the heaviness of consequence. Mercer didn't flinch, not outwardly, but something inside him buckled, like a pillar finally acknowledging cracks it had hidden for years. Adrienne didn't move, didn't celebrate. She simply breathed, long and controlled, as though letting go of tension she'd been carrying since the moment blue lights first lit her rearview mirror. The judge continued. Sergeant Mercer's actions constituted intimidation, unlawful detainment, and abuse of authority. Flashbulbs went off from reporters near the back. Mercer's lawyer lowered his head. "The plaintiff is awarded $35,000, the judge said. Additionally, this ruling will be forwarded to the Department of Justice and the Toledo Police Department for policy review." A murmur rippled through the benches. Mercer's eyes darted to Adrienne, not accusatory, not defiant, but hollow. like he was staring at the point where his identity had cracked. Outside, the courthouse steps were crowded now. Reporters, residents, officers, soldiers. Phones held high. Mercer exited first. Cameras flashed. Questions hurled like stones. Sergeant, do you regret your actions? Will you appeal? Did you know who she was? He shielded his face with a folder, but the truth followed him, etched in headlines, recorded in footage, preserved forever. Adrian walked out moments later. No cameras shoved in her face, no frenzy chased her. People stepped aside instinctively, not because she demanded it, but because she carried herself like someone who had nothing to prove. A young woman approached her quietly. "Ma'am, thank you." Adrian nodded once. Not for praise. For understanding. Inside the hallway, she checked her phone. A single message from her lawyer. "You won. Case closed." She exhaled slowly. Delaney joined her. "You could have asked for more. You know that." "It was never about money," Adrian said. "So what was it about?" Adrian looked through the glass doors at Mercer being ushered away under a storm of questions. Making sure that the next time he reaches for anger, she replied softly, "He remembers this moment first." And that was the truth of it, not revenge. Not humiliation. Accountability. A single crack in a system that needed many. But cracks let light in. And the room, this city, this moment, felt brighter for it. Poetic closure, emotional takeaway, resonant message. 2 months later, winter sunlight spilled across the training hall at Fort Wayne, painting long bright lines across the polished floor. Rows of brand new recruits sat straight-backed, their uniforms crisp, their eyes wide with ambition and nerves. Adrian stood at the front, her presence commanding without effort. She wasn't here to speak about logistics or battle formations. Today's lecture was one she rarely gave, but felt obligated to now. "Raise your hand," she said, voice steady, "if you think authority guarantees respect." A few hands lifted. Hesitant. Confident. Curious. Adrian nodded. Understandable. Many people believe that. She paced slowly, boots whispering against the floor. Her metals caught the morning light like small suns. "But respect doesn't come from the badge or the rank," she continued. "It comes from how you treat people when no one is watching." The room absorbed the weight of her words. She paused near the back row, where a young soldier sat with the rigid posture of someone trying very hard to impress. His eyes didn't leave her. "I want to tell you a story," she said. She didn't name the officer. Didn't mention the lawsuit. She didn't need to. The lesson wasn't the drama, it was the principle. One night, a man with power forgot his responsibility. He assumed control meant superiority. He assumed rank meant obedience without question. Quiet filled the space, thick and reflective. "I chose a different path," she said softly. "Not because I wanted to fight, but because sometimes silence lets the wrong people stay comfortable." A recruit in the front swallowed hard. "Courage isn't loud," Adrian said. "Sometimes it's a calm voice saying no. Not this time." She stepped back, letting the recruits see her fully. Not the medals. Not the uniform. Her. "I didn't stand up for myself," she said. "I stood up for everyone who couldn't." A breath rippled across the room. "You will wear this uniform in places where people trust you without knowing your name. Your power will affect strangers' lives. Remember this. Authority is not armor. It's responsibility." The recruits listened like the words were being carved into them. Adrian closed her folder. "Lead with integrity. Serve with humility. And, when someone needs you to stand up, stand." The room rose in quiet applause, not loud, not rowdy, but deeply respectful. Later, when the hall had emptied and the echoes faded, Adrian stepped outside. Snow had begun to fall, soft and slow, blanketing the base in a clean white hush. She breathed in the cold air, crisp and honest. Justice hadn't fixed everything, but it had made a small, necessary dent. And sometimes, that was how change began, not with explosions, but with a calm woman refusing to shrink. A truth spoken into the dark. A badge held accountable. A seed planted in the hearts of those who would one day lead. Adrian walked forward, snow crunching under her boots, each step steady and sure. The world wasn't perfect, But she was still here, still standing, still leading. And that, she knew, mattered more than anything.